Hey, what's going on, guys? Bandai is moving pretty fast and furious with the 30-minute fantasy lineup, so it's about time that I check it out for myself. Today we're going to be checking out the Liber Knight, and I also have one of the class-up armor sets here that I'm going to be checking out here in the video, the Rosan Paladin. So basically there's like kind of Liber and Rosan are kind of like the light and dark side, sort of, I guess, of the universe, and there is going to be like some backstory too, just kind of like how 30 Minutes Missions does have a backstory, which basically consists of the information that's given to us like in the manuals for the kits. And so I'm anticipating we're going to see something similar with these as well, but pretty cool how if you guys are into the more kind of fantasy side of things, that we have different releases that are kind of like different classes, like knights, wizards, alchemists, and these are not all the correct titles. Fantasy is not the thing that I'm really into myself, but as we've seen with the 30 Minutes Missions and 30 Minutes Sisters and the Armor Core series of 30 Minutes Missions kits, that these kits are a lot of fun and really cool, very fun to build and really simple to build as well. So looking forward to checking out the line and seeing what they're all about. Let's go ahead and get into it for today's video. And then we'll take a look at the main kit here before we check out the option part set. But for the Liber Knight, in very similar style to like the 30 Minutes Missions kits, we have like a full body image over here, and then a kind of close-up action image there in the background. And really cool to see all the details in the illustration here on the front. It looks very nice with this kind of like designing there in the background, and the action shot, of course, looks really cool there as well. On the ends of the box, we can see this is number 01 in the 30 Minutes Fantasy lineup. And then the bottom of the box is going to show us our contents here. So we've got like the base body, which is the silhouette, and then the job change, which is the armor class. So basically, this is kind of how the series is going to work. You'll have a basic silhouette, just like the body, and then all the armor parts, which is kind of the parts that you can mix and match, but what's going to make it as the class 1 Liber Knight here. And there's different classes that you can do. You can do job change or class up to the Liber Paladin, the Liber Holy Knight, which is basically like kind of a knight version with just these kind of additional gold parts on there as well. And that's a different option set that you can get. So a lot of really cool options that you can get to kind of upgrade your characters and do all that kind of cool fantasy type of stuff. Around here on the top of the box, then we've also got just once again a front and back image of the class 1 Liber Knight there, just to kind of see how the kit's going to look when it's all built. And it looks to be like it's probably painted in this sample there as well. For some more info, if you want, you can check out the QR code on the screen right there. But for now, let's go ahead and get this popped open, check out the contents, which I'm going to assume are going to be very similar, of course, to our kind of standard 30 Minutes Missions style model kit, where the runners will be separated kind of by segment and everything. Oh, so this is pretty cool. Looking at the instruction manual here at the top, it says that this is also element core water. So I guess basically kind of depending on the color of like the clear parts that you're using, they're going to have like a different meaning for that too. So if you wanted to get like a different color version of the kit, which I guess it would just basically be a different version of the silhouette, as the silhouette contains the clear parts there. So if you got a different kit that had red clear parts or green clear parts or something, then I guess it's going to have a different element core type. So that's pretty cool. It's kind of interesting. And again, if you guys want to pause the video and just read that quick little blurb about that, you can check that out. Here we got some more sample images there showing the kit in some really nicely articulated poses there. It looks pretty cool. And around the back side, some more about the story. That's all in Japanese and in English, but in some really, really fine print there. If you want to pause the video and read that, you can check that out there as well. There's some more about the armor cross there. Again, just kind of how you can change up all the armor pieces on the kit. And again, how you can change up the class type to like the Liber Holy Knight or the Liber Paladin here with just some different option armor sets that you can add onto this. So it's a really cool concept for sure. And then they also have the option part sets that are not for the bodies, but just like option like weaponry and accessory kind of sets that you can get. So they're really quickly making like a whole universe around this 30-minute fantasy line. It's pretty impressive. So here we have just like a real quick breakdown of how the kit's going to go together. And then it's just kind of a normal instruction manual with we have color on one side, although the main kit is obviously not going to be very colorful with it being mostly in white. But it is color here on the back side here, including our parts list. This side is going to all be in black and white. But for now, let's go ahead and get into the runners, starting off here with runner A. And as you can see, it's separated into 3 sections, section 1, 2, and 3 here. So I think you can probably pop these apart. And these are going to be like for different sections of the build. As you can see here, we have one part of clear blue. Mostly it's going to be this kind of light gray color, and then some parts here as well in this kind of bluish purple color there. Runner B is similar in that it's broken up into sections 1, 2, and 3. And once again, this is in a kind of light gray, but in a warm light gray, because as we go on here, runner C, it's in a slightly different, this is in like a cool light gray color, and so there's a little bit different variation in the color there between the two. But here for runner C, We have C3, C2, and C4, just kind of different parts of the runner there. Runner D back to that warmer tone of gray, and we've got similarly part 1, 2, and 3 of the D runner here. D1, I should say, as we do also have runner D2, not to be confused with part 2 of the runner, but D2 has a copy of sections 2 and 3, and then also adds another part of this over here, which is basically hand option parts. So it can kind of get confusing, I guess, a little bit with the runner labels on these. But the purpose of that is basically just so that they can reproduce different variations of these kits and only use like certain parts of the runners. But here we have runners E1 and E2, which is going to be some more parts here in the cooler tone of light gray. For runners F1 and F2 here, we've got one part in clear blue and one more part here in that purplish color. And the G runner looks to be like this is going to be specifically parts for the night variation. So this is runner G1, and as you can see, we have a couple of different numbered sections there, but obviously our sword and shield parts on there, and the rest of just kind of our armored parts here. Runner G2 there, runner G3 with a few different sections on there, and then runner G4, which again is just a copy of this section right here. So this looks like basically, like I said, all of our parts for making the night version of the kit. So very interesting. Let's go ahead and check out the kit. Alright guys, so I've got it all built up here, and I thought it would make sense to actually start off by just taking a look at this as just the silhouette form, which is just going to be kind of our base form that we're going to be adding parts onto. Although there's a little bit of like part swapping, as in like parts we need to remove off of this in order to add different parts on, but essentially this is going to be kind of our main body that we're using, and you can just keep this on its own. I mean, actually it's just a really interesting kit just on its own here. That's kind of what I wanted to start off, just kind of highlighting this first before we get into the rest of everything else, which is basically just option parts for the silhouette here. This is essentially our body that we're going to be adding all the armor and everything onto, and weapons, accessories, and all that other good stuff, of course, as well. But really nice kit, a really nice size to it as well. It's slightly larger than what I was expecting. It's definitely larger than like your standard 30 minutes missions kit. From going from like the very beginning of the 30 minutes missions line with like the Alto, for example, it was about in line with your standard HG Gundam kit, maybe slightly smaller. This one's definitely going to be slightly taller, so I'll give you a size comparison here in a minute as well. But let's go ahead and check it out in some closer detail. And so just to compare this to like your standard size Gundam model here, as you can see, it's going to be definitely a lot taller. And true 30 minutes fashion, we've got these hard points all over the kit here, giving us a lot of options for where we might want to plug additional parts or options onto here, even like the back of the head. Underside of the feet, surprisingly nothing there, but some nice detail. Like one of the areas, for example, where we're going to be swapping parts is here on the chest. This part will come off like that. They're revealing a couple more hard points there, and you can actually remove this clear part there too if you want it off there as well. We've got a hard point here on the shoulder as well, but it's interesting the way the shoulder armor is connected onto there. It's just kind of popped on just via a couple of little pegs right there, so that it should be pretty good. I usually don't really like this kind of connection because it tends to get kind of weak. So far, I mean, it's doing okay for these little shoulder parts there, but we'll see maybe for some more substantial shoulder parts that might give us some issues, but for the moment anyway, it's doing all right. And we've got that clear part for the eyes, but because it's set inside there, I mean, you can see that it's like a clear part and because it's shiny, but you wouldn't be able to tell if it's like clear blue or clear purple or clear black or whatever, so it's not really the most effective, or it doesn't really matter too much exactly literally what color it is. If we remove that face part off the front, it's a pretty horrifying like mechanical skeleton face there underneath that, but that's going to be another part that we're going to swap for different options. And then the other thing that I really like is that two-tone coloring. I mentioned that in taking a look at the runners, that there was kind of like two very slightly different colors of gray, and you can kind of see that here from a little bit warmer and a little bit cooler gray colors there adds makes for some nice kind of visual slight variations in the color. But let's talk a little bit about some of the articulation here. So we have a double joint in the neck, giving us a really nice range of movement there. Down, up. Doesn't really go up still like as far as I would like. A little bit more would be nice, but still a pretty good range there. The shoulder is pretty interesting as like the joint is set inside the chest there, and so that will be able to move up and down. So we basically have like a double joint there, which will allow for upward movement up to there. This can swing to the front and swing to the back, and that will allow you to bring the arm pretty well across the front of the chest there, like so. We've got that rotation above the bicep there, a single joint at the elbow, which is in pretty much keeping in line with the entirety of the 30 Minutes Missions and 30 Minutes Sisters lines. Pretty standard to just have a single joint there, but do get a pretty good range of motion there for that. And then our wrist, which will rotate plate and then bend here, giving us some nice range of motion there at the wrist as well. In the midsection, it's basically 3 parts with the top, middle, and bottom, and a joint in between each one. So that will give us a nice ab crunch forward and back, and then also a little bit of side-to-side movement there as well, and rotation at the hip section there. The hip joint is pretty standard, but each leg is on a separate piece, so like I can keep the one leg up and drop the other one up or down separately so they're not connected there like that. That will give us increased range upward. And if we drop that down and bring the leg out to the side, it's almost to 90 degrees to the body. So that works pretty nicely. We have rotation here, rotation here, and then also rotation at that purple part there in between. So 2 different points of rotation here in the thigh section. You can bring that up. We do have a double joint in the knee with some separation of that knee armor there, and that looks really nice full bend. And then down here at the ankles, these will move forward and back really nice and far, side to side as well, for being able to do a really nice wide stance while keeping the feet flat on the ground. No toe bend or anything, unfortunately, but again, some nice detail up underneath the feet there. So all right, let's job change to the Liber Knight then. So we need to remove that faceplate off the front of there. We're gonna replace that with this part, which will cover the front, like lower part of the face. This part here will attach to that hard point there in the forehead, basically giving us our mask like so. And then here in the hard point around the back of the head, we're gonna plug in our mohawk to complete the head like so. For the torso, we've gone ahead and removed that chest plate and the head for the moment, as we've got this part here we're gonna plug onto the chest. That covers up those 2 hard points, but still gives us a hard point here in the center, which we can use later. This collar part is gonna plug into the top of there, and then here at the backpack, gonna plug this piece onto the back. The collar fits onto that, and now we have a couple of these kind of articulated hard points here on the back as well for adding more stuff if we want to on there. You can omit those parts if you want. They're just these like purple joint parts. For the arm, we're going to have to take this off and replace these purple parts here. At the top, we've got this one here that has a peg hard point. We have this armor piece plugged onto that. And then at the forearm as well, similarly, we're going to remove this one and replace that with this purple ring that has a hard point and this armor piece plugged onto there like so. And actually, my mistake, that these shoulder parts are actually going to be plugged onto this hard point here that we added onto the back. We're gonna plug our shoulder armor pieces together onto there and then basically bring that around to cover up the shoulder. So this shoulder armor is not actually even connected onto the top of the shoulder or the top of the arm at all. Actually, it's connected onto the backpack, which is pretty interesting, and I like that. Hopefully that should actually work quite well. Lastly, we've got this armor piece here, which is going to plug onto the back. So again, while this is taking up that hard point there on the back of the arm, it still maintains a hard point for being able to attach additional parts onto there if you want. And then for our hand options, other than this closed fist, we do also have the option of a weapon holding hand here, of course, which we will certainly use. And then a nice open hand here as well. So really nice to have some options there for the hands. Now our upper body is done, and this is also a good time to remind you guys too that you can add as much or as little of this armor as you want. I mean, if you just like that and you wanted to keep the legs like so, you could do that. But going down to the waist section armor here, we've got this one piece which is going to connect right onto the front. And then our side skirt armor is connected onto this part here for like the back skirt. That just plugs onto the back, and then those pieces are just kind of enclosing the sides there like so. And then going down to the legs, once again, we're going to replace this purple ring here with the ring that has the hard point, which can be rotated around on either the front or the side or wherever, but we're going to keep that towards the front to attach this armor piece here onto the front of the thigh. And then onto the knee, we've got this part right here, which will attach into there like that. Now we still have this hard point open, and that's actually going to be used for other different sets. For this set, last thing to add onto the legs here is just going to be this little armor piece, which is going to connect onto the top of the foot. And you can see how the armor is going to be added to the leg. And another thing that I'll point out too is I really love the fact that, like I said, I really like the kind of two-tone light gray for the body, and then we have our third tone with the armor being in this basically kind of off-white here as well. So it's really nice that we have all these different tones of like off-white / light gray for this. All right, so once our knight is complete, then of course we've got its weapons here as well. And what would a knight be without his swords? Nothing really too crazy. We have a couple of different connection parts. You have this like a C-clip connection part here, which obviously you can just attach to the handle, and you can plug this anywhere around on the kit, onto the side or onto the back or the back of the hip section, onto the side of the leg. That kind of wouldn't really make too much sense, but the point is, of course, you can plug this wherever you want. We also have this connection bit here, which you can just plug into there like that for being able to attach this onto anywhere on the kit there as well. So a couple of different options for when this is not being held in the hand. And then we've got our shield, which is also going to be pretty simplistic, but it does leave a couple of hard points open there on the front for being able to add some like symbols onto there, kind of relief kind of markings. I think you can probably get for that. Alternatively, here on the back, a couple of different options for handles or connection points. So you have 4 connection points here. And then this part you can use to attach this onto the back of the arm while leaving the hand free. Or you can use this handle part and actually have this held in the hand. Or I would assume that it would work if you wanted to actually use both, but let's see. Well, it turns out maybe not. So if you have the handle there and the connection part there, it's kind of too close. So the handle down here and the connection part up there, it's too far. So you can't really use both of these connection parts. You either have to be using the handheld handle or this connection part here onto the back of the arm. For attaching this onto the arm, but some nice detail on that. Obviously you could do with some panel lining to just help bring out the detail here on the shield, but it does look pretty nice, and it's a pretty decent size, not too big, not too small. I like it a lot. So let's go ahead and take a look at the kit here in a few different poses, and as you'll see, and as I think you may already have taken a guess, that this kit is really awesome. I'm really impressed with this line. I know that I'm a little bit late coming into it after we're already a good few kits deep into the line. You've got a lot of options available to you at the moment. We'll be taking a look at that option set here in just a minute. But even though while like knights and magic, fantasy, stuff like this is not really usually the kind of thing that I'm super into, I gotta say really impressed with this kit. Overall, it's fantastic. Straight out of the box, it looks really nice, but of course you can make this look even better by at the very least doing a little bit of panel lining just to bring out all the details in the armor that you have there. I would recommend gray panel liner on this. I think would look really nice without being like too stark, too contrasting. But obviously if you wanted to go ahead and fully paint the thing, I think some silver paint on this would also look really nice. A really fantastic base kit here to kind of like start off the line. As I was saying before, that silhouette kind of like base body works so nicely. The articulation is really nice. It's solid and then has all the different hard points which we can utilize for adding all of our armor onto here to make it look really cool. And again, that armor is all, interchangeable, so you can use some and not all, or you can move stuff around and get creative with it. There's a lot of things that you could do with these sets for sure. So I gotta say, this is definitely 2 huge thumbs up. But right, so now that we've seen the main kit, let's go ahead and check out this option part set here as well. So this is the class up armor for the Rosan Paladin, 30-minute fantasy here, and you can see this is just in a bag meant to be hanging on the shelf there, as we see with a lot of the 30 minutes missions and 30-minute sisters option part sets here, if it's just a couple of runners. So basically we've got our contents there, and this just shows you like the parts that are included that are going to be around like the head, shoulders, chest, parts for the lower leg, and the parts for the skirt. Now this is obviously meant for the Rosan kind of dark colored versions of these kits, which this is going to be different. In my case, I'm adding this onto the knight, so it should make it very obvious and clear as to which are the option part sets, because we'll be adding these dark colored parts onto the like basically white colored Liber Knight. Should make it very easy for you guys to tell which parts are which. But again, here on the back's kind of breaking it down for you, the exact parts that are going to be swapped. So pretty interesting there to see that. Basically to take the Rosan Knight and either go to the Rosan Holy Knight with these parts over here, or the Rosan Paladin with these parts here. So very interesting. But yeah, as you might expect, looks to be like it's just a couple of runners. Basically kind of the equivalent of like the G runner that we saw for the Knight, where it was just like the last runner that was just like the couple of parts there which just make up the Knight version. In this case, these parts are just straight up black here this is OJ2-A1 for this runner here. This one is going to be OJ2-A2 for some more black parts, and then we've got some parts here in purple as well, OJ2-B for a few parts in purple. As for our instructions, they're just going to be here on the inside of this paper right there. We do have a little bit of the instructions here. The very end part of the instructions are going to be here in color just for that last little section, but that's pretty much it. Let's go ahead and check these out on the kit. All right, so for adding this class up armor for the Rosan Paladin onto this, basically, again, it's meant to be adding as like a accentuation armor or additional armor, or kind of additional parts to the Rosan Knight, not the Liber Knight, as there are some slight differences, obviously, aside from just like the main color difference. But like I said, we're just going to show you how these can be combined. So the back part on the top of the head is going to stay there. The faceplate part we're supposed to put back from the original kit, and then this new mask piece is just going to attach there at the top, like so. Our shoulder armor is kind of interesting, as we're just going to take off this one piece there from the top and replace that with this piece here. Should just plug onto the top of here. There we go. So that's going to look like that, giving us a kind of much larger piece of armor there at the shoulder with the addition of these parts here at the front and back. Around on the back side, we're going to have this piece here, which will just, you don't have to swap anything. This just attaches right onto there like that, giving us kind of this additional piece of armor here on the back side. And then similarly here on the front, we're just going to add this piece of armor here. Now I got to say the black looks nice, not a super into like the purple color used for this particular set. There's how that's going to look there at the top, and then we're going to switch this part here at the forearm as well. I'm going to omit that kind of like a cuff piece of armor there. Instead, put on this piece, which just gives this much larger piece of armor here on the side of the arms. Then we got this armor on the back side and then on this side here as well. At the front waist section here, we're just going to add this kind of like extension piece onto the front of there like that. For the waist section armor, we're going to completely change this one out. So just going to go ahead and remove this. So swap out this section here, but you are going to need to keep these joint pieces as we're going to use those. We've got these much longer and larger skirt pieces here that we're going to be adding on in place of that. So you can see how that's looking. And then one more bit of armor. As I said, this piece of armor is going to actually just plug into the lower part of the leg here, kind of like the middle of the shin essentially. So we're going to keep all the same armor that we had on from before, but just add an additional piece here, giving us lots of armor there on the front of the legs and a pretty cool looking guy there so far. Then we also have this part which we're going to add to the sword. Sword's going to fit inside, and this is basically just two pieces that fit around that, and he goes from a sword user to a claymore user like that, with this additional part there for that sword, making it much more substantial there. So obviously now our colors are a bit mismatched, and the shield is completely white. It looks a little bit odd in comparison with like our kind of half black, half gray suit that we've got there for the main unit. So it's not a perfect match, but I think it does do a good job of just kind of illustrating the point that I've been making about how everything is really compatible between the different sets. And like I said, how this armor set is basically meant for the Rosan Knight, not the Liber Knight, but obviously you can use in different parts and you can mix and match parts, and especially if you're going to be painting, the color really doesn't matter. So if you like the look of adding some of these armor parts on there, you could absolutely add them and, you know, just paint them to match in the colors and everything. So definitely a really cool set. And again, as you can tell now that we're taking a look at some more posing options here with this, that just the posability and the articulation of this kit is really, really nice. I'm using an action base here for some of the elevated poses. You might want to use an action base for some of the standing poses too. I mean, the kit can absolutely stand on its own, but for, you know, some of the more dynamic poses, you might find it just to be a little bit kind of top heavy, and just to make sure the kit isn't falling over, you may just want to use a base as well, just to kind of make sure that it's not going to fall down. But all right, guys, the last thing I want to try here just to wrap up the video is just trying a couple of other different 30 minutes missions option part set and 30 minutes sisters like type stuff, just in case you wanted to, you know, cross the streams a bit when it comes to these different lines. Obviously, everything's going to be pretty compatible, but, you know, to varying degrees of success, or basically kind of like how good different stuff's going to look when compared together. But you can kind of get the sense of how some things are going to look here just from a couple of examples. But hopefully you guys enjoy the video. I certainly am enjoying taking my first step into the 30 minutes fantasy line, and definitely looking forward to checking out some more in the future. So what do you guys think of the line so far? Have you built many of them, any of them? What do you think? Have you been kind of reserved about whether you're really all that interested in trying it or not? And has this video swayed you kind of either way? Let me know in the comment section. Of course, if you guys want to check out some of the kits and option parts sets for yourself, you can check the link in the video description to USA Gundam Store. Got loads of stuff in stock there, from 30 minutes fantasy, 30 minutes missions, 30 minutes sisters, and the Armor Core 30 minutes missions stuff as well. So check all that stuff out there on the website. And as always, guys, thanks so much for all of your support, leaving a like, making sure that you subscribed. If you enjoyed the video, I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. Until next time, we'll catch y'all later. Bye, guys.